Can you hear it? The echoes of 11 millennia ago are lurking somewhere within these deep canyons. We've become accustomed to the dramatic sounds whenever the name Iran is mentioned in international media. Air raid sirens, breaking news of conflict, or heated political debates on television. But listen again. There is a completely different Iran, where the dominant sound isn't gunfire, but the rhythmic beat of the Daff drums in ancient festivals, the poetic singing of Huray echoing from cliff to cliff, and the gentle sighs of villagers sleeping in the clouds. Look at this child. Here, the boundaries between home and road, between private and communal space, seem to have long since vanished. These people don't try to fight against time. They transform time into a protective layer of soot on the cave ceiling, into a philosophy of absolute symbiosis with the landscape. Welcome to a journey to discover the true soul of Iran. Here, survival is not a protracted battle against adversity, but a love song of patience and kindness. Located in northwestern Iran, about 40 miles south of the city of Tabriz. A tiny village has been buzzing with life for over 700 years. The story of this place started when the Sahand volcano erupted a long time ago. The ash and lava flowed down and hardened into a soft rock called tuff. Over centuries, wind and rain carved these flows into pointy, towering cones. Eventually, locals realized they could hollow them out to make homes. Today, it is one of the only places on the planet where this kind of cave living isn't just a museum for tourists, it is a real, breathing neighborhood. They call these homes Quran, which translates to hives. Inside these rock towers, the vibe is surprisingly homey. Because the stone walls are sometimes 6 feet thick, the temperature stays perfect. When the Iranian sun is scorching at midday, it feels like the rooms have natural air conditioning. In the freezing mountain winters, those same walls hold on to the heat from a small fire like a warm blanket. Most of these cones are 3 or 4 stories high. Usually, the ground floor is used for the family's animals, like goats or sheep, while the upper floors serve as the kitchen and living rooms. In the early morning, you hear the village wake up before you see it. The first sound is usually the lopsided footsteps of donkeys clicking against the narrow, steep stone paths. If you need to move a heavy sack of walnuts or a new hand-woven rug, a donkey is your taxi. Then comes the smell of wood smoke. Look up, and you'll see thin blue trails of smoke rising from the tips of the rock cones. Inside, the women are lighting coal fires to boil water in old copper kettles that have likely been in their families for generations. The kitchen hearth isn't a modern appliance. It is literally a hole cut into the stone floor, worn smooth by the hands of mothers and grandmothers. If a local invites you in, you will experience a ritual that is all about slowing down. They don't just stir sugar into their cups. Instead, they give you a hard, yellow rock sugar called nabat. You hold a small piece between your teeth and sip the hot, dark tea through it. It is a quiet lesson in patience. The sweetness arrives gradually, bit by bit, as you chat. There are no perfect corners or straight lines. It is just a simple, hard-working life where people fill plastic jugs at the icy mountain springs and hang their laundry against the rugged cliffs. Have you ever walked down a neighborhood street and realized you were actually standing on someone's roof? Perched roughly 3,700 feet, the logic of the world feels flipped upside down here. Because the mountain is so steep, inclined at nearly 60 degrees, there simply wasn't enough flat ground to build traditional roads. So, the people who settled here over 1,000 years ago got creative. They turned the roof of one house into the front yard and sidewalk for the house above it. When you arrive, the first thing you notice isn't the sight, but the quiet. Since cars are physically unable to navigate the narrow, interconnected rooftops and stairs, the usual roar of engines is replaced by the soft chatter of neighbors and the distant clink of tea glasses. The houses are painted a distinct yellowish clay color, a choice made by generations of locals to help the buildings stand out through the thick gray fog that rolls in from the Caspian Sea almost every afternoon. Inside small, warm kitchens, women are busy preparing ash reshte, a thick, hearty soup made with wild mountain herbs, lentils, and handmade noodles. If you stroll along the streets, again, literally someone's roof, you'll see grandmothers sitting in wooden doorways, their fingers moving fast as they knit small, colorful wool dolls. These dolls, vibrant with reds and greens, are a symbol of the village. There is no such thing as a private space in the way we think of it. If a kid kicks a ball, it might land in a neighbor's courtyard 2 levels down. If someone is frying onions, the whole block knows what is for dinner. This physical closeness has baked a deep sense of interdependence into the people. You can't be a stranger when your neighbor is walking over your head to get to the grocery store. The architecture doesn't try to flatten the land, it embraces the slope. Every time a storm passes through, the moisture actually helps the yellowish mud brick walls harden, making the village stronger with every rain. Palangan isn't like the flat suburbs most people know. Tucked deep in the Tangja Canyon of Iranian Kurdistan, the village is split in two by a rushing river. Huge limestone walls rise up on both sides, and the houses are stacked like building blocks against the rock. Because the slope is so steep, there's no room for real streets. Everything moves vertically. If you want to see your friend, you don't drive around the block. You climb 10 flights of stone stairs. By noon, the village is a hive of activity. You'll see men coming up from the canyon floor, their backs bent under heavy crates of fresh trout. It seems impossible to find a massive fish farm in the middle of these dry, jagged mountains, but the locals have used the cold spring water to create something special. They raise the trout in narrow stone channels right by the river. Lunch usually involves the smell of walnut wood burning in open pits. The families split the fish, press them flat against bamboo frames, and grill them right outside their doors. If you're walking by, the smoke follows you up the mountain. You might see a donkey loaded with supplies, carefully picking its way up the narrow paths, its hooves clicking against the dry stone. There are no cars here. The paths are barely wide enough for two people to pass each other. This is Abyaneh, often called the Red Village. The first thing you notice is the color. Every house is built from red mud bricks. The dirt here is packed with iron oxide, and the locals will tell you a secret. The more it rains, the harder these walls get. It is a town built to survive the elements by becoming part of the mountain itself. The women are the heartbeat of the village. Unlike the black chadors seen in much of Iran, the women of Abyaneh have worn their signature floral scarves for centuries. It is their way of saying, "This is who we are." They spend their afternoons drying fruit in the high-altitude sun to make sure the village has enough to eat when the harsh mountain winter rolls in and cuts them off from the rest of the world. If you look closely at the old wooden doors, you will see something clever. There are two different knockers on every entrance. One is long and heavy, making a deep thud. The other is round and light, making a higher ringing sound. This way, the people inside know if a man or a woman is at the door. If it's a deep thud, the man of the house goes to answer. It is a simple, two-toned system of privacy that has worked for generations. They aren't worried about the latest news or global politics. They are focused on the harvest, the strength of their red walls. In the rugged hills of southeastern Iran, near the edge of the Lut Desert, there is a place that has been hiding in plain sight for 12,000 years. From a distance, it looks like a pile of dusty rocks, but as you get closer, you start to see small wooden doors and tiny windows carved directly into the mountain face. They are hand-carved homes called quiches. There are over 400 of these cave apartments stacked at different heights along the canyon. The walls are incredibly thick, sometimes 6 feet or more. This means that while the desert sun is beating down outside, the inside stays as cool as a basement. In the winter, it's the opposite. The stone holds onto the heat, keeping families snug while the mountain winds howl. If you step inside a quiche today, the first thing you'll notice is the ceiling. It's pitch black. It looks like it's been painted with coal, but that dark layer is actually decades, sometimes centuries, of soot from cooking fires. This isn't a sign of a dirty house, it's a stroke of genius. The soot acts as a natural sealant, toughening the soft rock, so it doesn't crumble onto your head while you sleep, and it provides an extra layer of insulation. Meymand's cuisine is rooted entirely in what can be foraged from the surrounding deserts and highlands without cultivation. Small, hard-shelled wild pistachios with an intense flavor. The kernels are ground by hand into a paste that serves as the foundation for a dense, protein-rich soup called Abyaneh. This is simmered slowly half until the raw nut's bitterness transforms into a deep, nearly smoky profile. A flatbread known as nan tia is stretched paper-thin and baked directly on a hot iron plate over glowing coals. It is produced in large batches intended to last for weeks, then stacked and stored in cool inner chambers, where the stone maintains a steady temperature. In these conditions, the bread doesn't so much go stale as it concentrates, growing denser and more flavorful with each passing day. The people are semi-nomadic, moving between these caves and seasonal huts depending on the weather. You won't find many flashy gadgets or the hum of big city traffic here. Instead, you find people who know the mountain like the back of their hand. They speak a dialect that feels like a whisper from the past, and they treat every visitor like a long-lost relative. Welcome to Makunik, often called the village of the dwarfs. For hundreds of years, this place remained a total secret, tucked away in the rugged mountains of eastern Iran. It wasn't just hidden by geography, it was built to disappear. When you walk through the narrow, winding alleys, you feel like a giant in a storybook. The houses are tiny, made of sun-dried mud and stone, and they barely rise 1 meter above the ground. To get inside, you have to bow low, lower than you ever have before. The wooden doors are tiny, some only 80 centimeters tall. This wasn't about being small, it was about survival. In a land where wood is rare and the winter nights can freeze your blood, a small house with a low ceiling is easier to keep warm and much harder for invaders to spot from a distance. Step inside, and the air smells like wood smoke and old dust. In the center of the room is the kandik, a single hearth that is the heart of the home. Here, there are no private bedrooms or fancy dining tables. The whole family eats, sleeps, and works within arm's reach of that fire. It's a tight squeeze. For centuries, they lived in almost complete isolation because the soil was so dry and they had no way to irrigate the land. They lived on a diet that would seem impossible to us today. They didn't eat meat. They didn't even drink tea. In fact, until about 100 years ago, drinking tea was considered a sin. Instead, they relied on the wild jujube. This small, date-like fruit was their lifeblood. They dried it, ground it into flour, and mixed it with whatever grain they could find to make a dense, heavy bread. Historically, the residents were significantly shorter than average. Many were under 150 centimeters tall. Scientists say it was due to a mix of malnutrition and limited genetics in such a remote area. Today, with better food and roads reaching the valley, the younger generation is growing taller, but the tiny houses remain as a shadow of their past. A small pocket of life, tucked away in the Uraman region of western Iran. If you didn't know it was there, you'd drive right past the entrance to the valley and never guess that a community has been thriving here for over 1,000 years. The first thing you notice in Haji isn't the scenery, but the sheer verticality of everything. Because the mountains are so steep, the villagers had to get creative. There is a saying here that the yard of the upper house is the roof of the lower house. Down at the base of the village, the Sirwan River rushes by with a heavy, constant roar. For the people of Haji, this river isn't just water. They call it the voice of the mountains. Nearby, the famous Bell Spring pours out thousands of liters of icy water every second. The locals believe this water is a gift, and you'll see men filling old clay jugs to take back up the steep stone stairs. This village is the world capital of the Milash, a traditional white shoe made entirely by hand. There are no machines here. One pair of shoes can take weeks of patient work. The coolest part? These shoes don't have a left or a right side. They are perfectly symmetrical, designed to fit either foot, symbolizing a life that is simple, balanced, and built to last on rugged mountain paths. Life here moves at the speed of a boiling kettle. You'll be invited for tea before you can even say hello. That is the Kurdish way. They might not have much in terms of modern luxuries, but they will offer you the warmest seat by the fire and a plate of fresh walnuts gathered from the trees in the valley. They've survived for centuries by looking out for one another and making sure their neighbor's roof stays clean. Because after all, that roof is their own front yard. Located nearly 5,000 feet up in the Zagros Mountains, Uraman Takht looks like a giant throne carved directly into the rock. The houses are built like a staircase. The walls are made of dry, stacked limestone. This means the villagers did not use any mortar or cement to hold the rocks together. Instead, they carefully fitted each stone like a puzzle piece, anchoring them with heavy walnut wood beams. They built it this way so the houses could move slightly with the earth during an earthquake rather than cracking. Daily life in Uraman is a beautiful, loud, and communal affair. You cannot be a private person here. You hear the Harami language, an ancient tongue older than modern Persian. It sounds like a rhythmic chant, passed down from mothers to daughters over steaming pots of stew. The stars of the kitchen are the wild walnuts grown in the valley below. These walnuts are different. They have a sharp, bitter edge that only turns sweet after being simmered for hours in big clay pots. The most famous time to be here is during the festival of Pir Shalia. Imagine hundreds of men, dressed in traditional grey felt vests, standing on those tiny rooftops, holding hands and swaying in huge circles. The Daff drums beat so hard you can feel the vibration in your chest. They are celebrating a legendary healer, but really, they are celebrating each other. They cook massive amounts of lamb and wheat in communal pots. No one owns the meal. It belongs to the whole village. They do not need much from the outside world because they have each other. In this village, you don't check the weather app. You just look at how the mist is dancing around your boots. Known as the roof of Mazandaran, Filband sits about 2,700 meters in northern Iran. Its name carries a funny bit of history. The fil means elephant, and band means to stop or tie down. Local legend says the climb to this peak was so steep and rugged that even a massive elephant couldn't make it to the top. Today, the road is still a winding, nail-biting path, but once you arrive, the rest of the world just seems to disappear under that thick blanket of clouds. Life is lived at a different pace, one dictated by the needs of the livestock and the mood of the sky. Most families are semi-nomadic, moving their cattle up to these high pastures during the warm months. By 6 in the morning, the village is humming. The smell of burning beechwood and boiling goat milk hangs heavy in the air, mixing with the scent of rain-soaked grass. You can start your lunch under a blazing sun and finish it in a shivering fog. Locals often joke that you can experience all 4 seasons in just one day. When the sea of clouds rolls in, the houses look like little wooden islands floating in milk. During these moments, the neighbors gather. There's no such thing as a quick hello here. There are no fancy malls or big theaters here. Entertainment is watching a stray horse gallop through the mist, or listening to the old men share stories about the winters when the snow piles up so high it covers the windows. For the people of Filband, the world below might be loud and fast, but up here, they are perfectly happy living between the earth and the stars. If you wander deep enough into the emerald green slopes of the Gilan province in northern Iran, the air starts to change. The dry heat of the central plateau disappears, replaced by a cool, damp mist that smells like wet earth and wood smoke. This is where you'll find Milash. The big superstar here is the Milash waterfall. To get to it, you have to hike through a forest that looks like it belongs in a fairy tale. When you finally see it, the water crashes down from about 82 feet in the air. It's loud, it's cold, and it's spectacular. But for the people living here, the waterfall isn't just a photo op for tourists. It's the heartbeat of their land. It feeds the streams that keep their gardens lush and their spirits high. If you visit during the harvest, you'll see the hillsides turn a vibrant shade of purple. This is the famous Goli Gavzaban, or borage. Milash is actually one of the top producers of this medicinal herb in the entire country. You'll see grandmothers and young kids alike out in the fields, their fingers stained purple as they carefully pick the delicate petals. They've been doing this for generations, turning these tiny flowers into a tea that can calm even the most stressed out soul. There aren't many secrets in a village of about 40 households. If someone is building a new roof, 10 neighbors show up with hammers before they're even asked. If someone has an extra basket of hazelnuts from their trees, it's left on a neighbor's doorstep. It's a place where the individual doesn't exist without the community. About 400 years ago, a Persian king named Shah Abbas relocated thousands of people from the country of Georgia to this high-altitude corner of central Iran. Today, the village of Chogyurt sits nearly 2,500 meters. Despite being tucked away in the Isfahan province for 4 centuries, the people here have never forgotten who they are. In the early morning, life in Chogyurt feels like a choreographed dance with nature. The honey here is famous because the bees feed on 10 different types of wild mountain herbs that you can't find anywhere else. The people here converse in a Georgian dialect that sounds perfectly normal in a village on the outskirts of Tbilisi. Yet here they are, in the heart of the Middle East. Chogyurt is one of the snowiest places in Iran. During the winter, the snow can pile up to 2 meters high, turning the village into a white fortress. People here don't complain about the cold. They stock up on 50-pound bags of flour and jars of pickled vegetables. Life moves indoors, around small heaters, where families tell stories about ancestors who survived the long trek from the Caucasus Mountains 14 generations ago. Imagine driving for 5 hours straight through the bone-dry Dashti Kavir Desert. It's just endless salt flats and shimmering heat until, out of nowhere, thousands of tall green date palms pop up against the red rocks. That's Garmeh. It felt less like a village and more like a secret hideout that time simply forgot to update. Everything in the village is made of mud, clay, and palm trunks. Walking through the quiet alleys, you see walls that have been standing for over 400 years. It's not a museum, it's just how people live. You might see an old man sitting on a wooden bench or a few goats wandering around, but mostly you just hear the wind rustling the palm leaves. When the sun sets, the desert sky totally takes over. Since there are only about 200 residents, there is zero light pollution. You can look up and see millions of stars stretching across the horizon. Sitting by a small fire and sharing dates that taste like pure honey, you realize Garmeh isn't about sightseeing. It's about finally catching your breath in the middle of the sand. The mist was rolling down from the mountains, thick and white, hiding everything except the red-tiled roofs of the houses peeking through the canopy. It didn't feel like a typical tourist destination. It felt like I'd accidentally stumbled into someone's private sanctuary. Sarvelat is tucked away in northern Iran, just a few miles from where the mountains literally crash into the Caspian Sea. What makes this place special isn't just the view. Though seeing blue water and emerald green peaks at the same time is pretty wild, it's the rhythm of the place. Everything here moves at the speed of a slow, deep breath. There's a local legend about a woman named Kava. About 25 years ago, she started cooking for a few stranded travelers on her tiny balcony. She didn't have a fancy business plan, she just served what she knew. Today, her name is known all over the country, and people drive for 4 or 5 hours just to eat her famous kebab torsh. Walking through the village, you'll see neighbors leaning over stone walls to chat or tending to small gardens overflowing with herbs. There are no loud sirens or bright city lights here. Instead, you hear the constant rush of the river below and the sound of wind rustling through the orchards. Even though only a few hundred people live here year-round, they have a way of making you feel like a long-lost friend. "13 villages, 13 different geographical regions, 13 distinct languages and cultural nuances. Yet behind this unusual appearance, they all meet at a single common point: absolute symbiosis with the terrain. In Iran, architecture never seeks to conquer nature. At Masuleh, the 60-degree slope of the mountains and forests is not an obstacle, it becomes a path. At Kandovan, the volcanic rock towers are not hindrances, they are bedrooms. And at Makunik, Mother Earth is not just a foundation, but a warm blanket, sheltering the houses built underground. This is a construction method that doesn't begin with technical drawings, but with patient observation over hundreds of generations. The people here choose materials not for their appearance, but for how they behave over time. The layer of soot on the ceiling of the Meymand cave is not a sign of backwardness, but a valuable biological insulation layer. The red stone walls of Abyaneh are not just for decoration, they become even stronger after each downpour. The greatest philosophy these villages teach us is interdependence. When nature imposes a constant harsh pressure, a single household is not a viable unit for survival. Why is one person's roof another's yard? Why does one house's hearth warm the wall of the neighboring house? Because they understand that only a unified, interconnected unit has the strength to overcome the long winters on the Zagros Mountains or the scorching heat of the Lut Desert. The boundary between mine and ours here is not blurred by scarcity, but by wisdom. Iran is not what you usually see through the lens of conflict. Iran truly lies here, in the warmth emanating from the sooty cliffs, in the sweetness of the Nabat sugar cube held between the lips, and in the warm hospitality that time cannot erode.